took me a while. But no, I appreciate it. It's Aboute language. Edinburgh students' plans for school outreach to develop knowledge about language and awareness of linguistics.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me. This talk is going to be probably a bit different to some of the others in the conference. To start with, I'm an undergraduate, so thanks for the organisers for accepting the submission. And it's also a undergrad project as well. And it's also slightly different to the rest of this session, Linguistics in the Classroom, which I'll go over in a little bit and not repeat myself. Keen about language, obviously the Scots for knowledge about language, and it will become apparent what that is in a bit. So these are the people that have been involved in the group, all undergraduates, and we've had help from Graham Trousdale and some other institutions helping us develop the project. Okay, so I'm going to look at some terms. What is knowledge about language? What exactly are we doing? What motivated us to do the project? And then what existing projects are already in place? What are academics already doing to get linguistics in the classroom? And what was their motivation? What we've done so far in our project group, and the future, what's next? Okay, so KAL, knowledge about language. It's a specific term in education and the curriculum. Generally, the encompasses a few things: understanding of one's first language, literacy, and learning second languages. I'm going to tend to focus on the first of these, as this is the area which seems to be the most understated so far. And what we're doing, in a nutshell, we have been developing presentations and activities. So the project's been going since about February, so just a few weeks. So we're going to go over this sort of development stage and look at how we want to implement these and actually take them into schools, which we haven't done yet. So plan to take these into schools, engage children with academically informed knowledge about language. So academically informed being based on sort of current research in linguistics, rather than what the government thinks should be in there. And some sort of key terms, obviously knowledge, but I don't think it's just about knowledge about language. It's about sort of learning facts. It's about the understanding and the linguistic inquiry, and sort of beginning to make generalizations and understand language and how people speak. And of course, role of linguistics in academia and society. So this is a quick slide I've added in, so it might seem a bit out of place. As I said, this is slightly different to the two other talks in this block. And it sort of came to my attention that there's these two, what seem pretty much similar, almost paraphrases of each other. But linguistics in education is the sort of desire to get more academically informed knowledge about language, and educational linguistics more about the research of second language acquisition and how that's implemented in the classroom. So what motivated us? So if you're all comfortable, hands up if you know what linguistics is. Okay, everyone? Keep your hands up. Now put your hand down if you discovered linguistics after starting your undergraduate degree or your first undergraduate degree. And hands down if you discovered linguistics whilst picking a topic for your undergraduate degree. And then who was familiar with linguistics at A-level equivalent during their hires, or maybe did an English language A-level? And then who sort of knew about linguistics or this sort of inquiring about language like this during their sort of compulsory education up to GCSEs? So, one person. Sort of maybe a couple of people, but in the sort of point is in a room of people who are all pretty much professional linguists, or studying it or devoting their time to it, and coming to a conference about linguistics. It's surprisingly few people had heard about this line of inquiry before they were adults. I imagine if you compare this to another academic discipline like history or biology, a lot of people would say I was inspired since I was little, since primary school, but that doesn't seem to be the case for studying language as a science. So the project grew out of undergraduate linguistics students' own experiences at school and experiences of non-linguists since they've been studying. So experiences at school. This is sort of a collection of some of the thoughts of the group. English language just seemed to be about studying non-fiction in an English literature way. So not actually about studying language, just a way of studying, another way of studying the written word. Lack of importance given to language, sort of beyond the written word, beyond sort of comprehension and how to write essays. Sort of a phonological example, one of our group, when it grew up in Preston, told that, of course, for me they aren't homophones, but luck and look weren't homophones, but for them they were look and look. So it shows the dominance of sort of standard English, even where standard English isn't standard. And of course, heavy emphasis on prescriptivism, and I imagine everyone can find anecdotes about that. A good example of what you can't get in the future. Okay, experiences with non-linguists, some classics here. How many languages do you speak? I imagine that's something that everyone's heard, and there is a few linguist llamas, memes. Next one's my favourite. Asking linguists how many languages they speak, like asking a dog how many diseases they have. I mean, it's when a place like that is ridiculous, but it happens all the time. So yeah, subjectivity about the use of standard English without really being formed about it. This is one of our group who's spent the year abroad in Germany. So it's compared to High German. High German being the sort of equivalent to standard English, the sort of standard form, and the sort of the main, the standard form. But there seems to be a transparency that it's a sort of it's a code that is used as a common code in sort of business and education, and it's not some sort of pure golden form of the language, which everyone that doesn't speak it is sort of uncouth and degrading the language. And this one, I better watch what I don't use bad language around you, and I often say, please do, it's data, that's what we like. We like the anomalies, that's what we're studying, we're not grammar police. This is a nice webcomic I found. Becoming a linguistics undergraduate to entering the matrix. Having to relearn that there's not 26 sounds in the alphabet, there's hundreds, and everything like verbs are doing words and all that stuff that we taught at school, but really sort of have to unlearn when actually studying the science of language. So yeah, sort of consensus we felt was that linguistics was misunderstood and underrepresented in schools and the general public. And we're all involved in the Linguistics Society here and had experience with sort of peer-to-peer public speaking, liaising with staff and organisations, peer learning and support, and devising creative ways to promote linguistics. And what we wanted to do is take that from peer-to-peer situation and take it to sort of a school situation with younger people. So yeah, I mean, it's all sort of been a bit anecdotal and subjective in our own opinions so far. So we wanted to look at what was actually already going on and what academics were doing, and some more sort of evidence-based reasons for looking to getting more linguistics in education, or sort of towards educational reform. So lots of nice acronyms and things. There's the Committee for Linguistics in Education, which is a subcommittee of LAGB and BAL. And our own Graham Charles is the current chair, and also Dick Hudson down at UCL has been very influential. Sort of their motivation. I had to resist putting Star Wars music here. But sort of up to the 50s, there's a sort of traditional grammar, very prescriptive, learned by rote fashion. Then 60s to the 80s, older styles were scrapped. So when there's was scrapped from the exam, so there's no emphasis to teach it. So teachers not getting specific linguistic training. In the 80s, the national curriculum was developed, and there was some material, I think by Ron Carter in Nottingham. Yep. But it was rejected in favour of more prescriptive material, and each sort of government since has had put importance on linguistics or knowledge about language in education, but it seemed to have a sort of either a literary emphasis, the sort of literacy that Labour had, the coalition loves phonics. I mean, that's mainly towards literature. It is overlapping with phonology, but it is again criticised by many linguists, and well, not just linguists. And then recent emphasis in the news on SPAG, which is a horrible word, spelling something and grammar, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. This is even being criticised by heads, so it's teachers who are starting to feel that language education isn't what it should be. Yeah. Meanwhile, in academia, all this exciting stuff going on. There's linguistics wars, formal syntax being developed, Jean Berko doing language acquisition stuff at the WUG, David Crystal in the UK, Eskimos and acacia trees and evolution of language and all this stuff. Since the 60s, of a revolution in linguistics, and linguistics has become a really popular degree around the world. People who do it particularly seem to get into it, and there does seem to be this rift between what's going on in schools and what's going on in higher education. Okay, so Clyde, Committee for Linguistics and Education. A couple of big projects they've got is the Language Detectives, which is a summer school in the south of England at Villiers Park Educational Trust, and that's another one run by Graham and some others. And UCLO, the United Kingdom Linguistics Olympiad, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in a second. There have been some proposals for a linguistics A-level, but I think they've been rejected so far, and I don't know if there's any more plans to propose that. But personally, I think that would be another interesting thing to keep on trying to propose. So the Linguistics Olympiad. UCLO is the UK organisation of a sort of international group of Olympiad organisations. It's only been going a couple of years, but the Linguistics Olympiads internationally have been going since the 60s. But what is a Linguistics Olympiad? Okay, they are competitions for schools. It's generally sort of A-level, hires age students that do it, but there is GCSE and standard grade level students doing it as well. There's individual and team challenges. They're mainly based on sort of code breaking and translation of unseen languages. It's the sort of thing that you don't need that much linguistic background to do, but it does sort of explore language in a way that isn't available in the curriculum. And they use real languages as well as constructed languages and this sort of cool alien languages and things like that. So right, a good example of a competition paper that they get. So this would be one of the questions, and they get several of these during the competition. So they get a bit of background knowledge on the language, a set of data, some questions, and then if we can extract the sort of minimum information you need to have a go yourself. So you want to translate ape rach mi mech. So you see that ape appears in all of them. Oh, but then all of them start with the. But then obviously, we know it's probably unlikely to be that. It's more likely to be the content words. But it gets the young people thinking about what's language made up of and how it differs in different languages. And so you start to see, well, that must be the verb to work, and then on and on. Don't know if anyone's worked it out by now. Something like the good man works a lot. But that's the sort of, they have quite a few of these problems to get through, and I mean, I've looked at some of them for hours, and I know some actual academics have been stumped by some of them, but some of the contestants seem to be able to get nearly 100% on them. So what have we done so far? So we've been meeting weekly and developing this project. So we met with Graham and looked at what the sort of the scope we wanted to get out of it, so it wouldn't sort of overlap too much with what UCLO were already doing. So we want to promote general linguistics outlook that would complement, be separate from other initiatives. And include info on UCLO, particularly for if we are presenting to sort of older teenagers, but keep the information more general. So we came up with an initial aim to develop 3 types of sort of presentation or activities. One for lower secondary, one which we want to hopefully expand to primary schools as well, one for upper secondary and sixth form, and one for sort of more as a model that we could maybe sort of liaise with other countries and from sort of more international model. So this is just going back to an earlier slide to recap of the aims. Engage children with knowledge about language, so we want to put sort of emphasis on knowledge, understanding, inquiry, and also the sort of role of linguistics. But also to just understand that you can think about language like that even if you don't know the word linguistics. So we just wanted to open up the idea that linguistics can be studied as a degree, but didn't want it to make it into a careers talk, but wanted to sort of unpack that linguistics and knowledge about language is useful for anything, whatever you go into. So we collected sort of statements of sort of traditional definitions of linguistics, and sort of packaged this into a sort of game show idea to sort of expose some of the myths. So now I'm going to switch from giving a talk at a postgraduate conference to giving a talk at school. So right, we've got so not so familiar family fortunes. So the topic is linguistics, and the first contestant has a go at what linguistics might be. Speaking lots of languages, that's obviously one we've heard a lot, but is that actually linguistics? No. Seeing if there are language universals, that sounds quite plausible. Yeah, that's there, but it's not one that all linguists would say is their priority or important. Treating all languages, dialects and accents equally. Are they all equal? I mean, is Latin supposed to be sort of more grammatical? Yeah, no, treating them all equally. Learning how to write properly, which seems quite important. That's not actually the emphasis of linguistics. Think about language scientifically. I mean, is it a science? Yeah, it's quite an important one as well. Understanding variations between place and time. Yeah, another important one, particularly for sociolinguists and historical linguists. Defining language as a human ability and languages as systems. Sounds a bit abstract, that one, but it's an important thing, but particularly as sort of new fields of evolutionary linguistics develop. Avoiding using bad language in grammar. We don't need to try to avoid bad grammar. If we don't use it, then it's not grammar. One more, describing the structure and function of language, and that's probably one of the most recognised definitions, so it's special prize. Okay, so we thought this could either be used at the beginning of a presentation or workshop to expose myths about linguistics, or maybe a summary or pop quiz at the end to help consolidate content. So, ideas for content. So how do we incorporate these key notions? We want to unpack what we want to convey about each one, what sort of examples and activities would be put in there. So it's a bit of a mind map to explore the describing structure and function. So I first gave this talk at ULab, the Undergraduate Linguistics Association of Britain conference a few weeks ago, and David Crystal spoke before me, and he was talking about his sort of early pioneering stuff with clinical linguistics, and how they were starting to, rather than just talking to other academics, they were talking to patients and patients' families and having to think about not just using all the technical terms. So I've sort of just tried to expand this into using words that maybe aren't so technical, sort of form and shape as structure, obviously use as function. And then some sort of other ideas that come out of that. So description versus prescriptivism, and just thinking about language and looking at language as a science. Again, other of the definitions are starting to come in, even though we're looking at the main one. Patterns in language, sort of form and shape. Form and user independent, so that's sort of looking at the difference between the shape and the use, and then the use, the meaning, but that's sort of words and sentences, semantics, implied meaning, pragmatics, social meaning, and then sort of all these links come from all of them. So we start thinking about what actual examples of sort of data could we use. So we've thought about, I don't know if this is an overused one with young people, and they might hear it all the time at Linguistics Open Days, but like placement tends to be something thought of as being motivated by the sort of the teenage generations. It's like nonsense songs, just demonstrating structure without meaning, and looking at animal communication, so there's meaning without structure, or necessarily the amount of structure that's in, maybe not the right term, but it's the same sort of structure that's in human language. Looking at global English, and also sort of linguistic traits that are local to the school or the area or the country where the school is, when you're looking at sort of Scotland and England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So something that sort of comes up with sort of in Scotland is sort of also sort of looking at speech technology and sort of stuff that's been in the news about technology and voice recognition, and how sort of different accents maybe are being marginalised. So can I have a quick look at like placement, and sort of looking at how it could be presented and how you could just sort of explore the questions around it. So it's not exactly the same as the Facebook like, but it's a nice. So there's a little video.
So like I heard the song today, and I bet you could totally like relate to it, because I did too. The lyrics were like something about love and, you know, loving somebody and, you know, like stuff like that. And so I figured like it was the best song in the world.
So a little like counter shows 6 likes during that statement. So thinking about questions like asking young people where can like appear, what do they feel about the use of like, if they don't like it, why do people like it or dislike it, and things like does the text still make sense if they're all removed. So having a quick read through of that, something like, so like I heard this song is pretty much equivalent to so I heard this song, but something like and you know, stuff that and so I figured doesn't really sound that grammatical without like. So put it back in there. So it starts being more questions: how many different types of like are there? Are all the likes doing the same thing? And we're starting to see that no, they're not. And if some can be removed, sort of what's the point of it? What does it do? Is it like more of an optional word like that, or is it something which has some sort of status with friends? So that's sort of an example about how we could build in sort of linguistic inquiry to young people. Like problems and practicality sort of questions that have arisen. I think some of them I may have gone over already, but adapting material for different schools, not just different linguistic areas, but different schools with different sort of in different socioeconomic areas, or some schools have like a status. There's the secondary school I went to is now a media and technology college, so tailoring it to something like speech technology, which also has quite big vocational implications, would maybe be something that the teachers and the head teacher would be interested in, or sort of more interested in saying, well, this is something that you can come in and do. This is sort of a big one, whether we would do sort of like a talk, even I showed that you can make them sort of quite interesting and interactive, but is that really the way to go? Is just someone talking about stuff going to be boring, or do we want sort of more workshops, or like a more sort of 50-hour-long classroom session with more interaction? And we thought, depending on the sort of time slots we would probably be offered from different schools, we try and have sort of a collection of resources. So some would be maybe shorter talks, and some sort of actual activities and sort of classroom sessions that we could use for different situations. Breadth versus depth. Obviously, linguistics is a really large subject area. So how do you sort of cover all of linguistics in a short session? And then obviously the bits you want to go into, you want to explore in depth. So that's what the questions coming up. Adapting it to different age groups, appropriateness and misrepresentation of material. This came up when we were thinking of sort of media, sort of film clips and stuff to use, whether sort of demonstrating maybe attitudes to different accents, but maybe in a humorous setting, which are good examples of attitudes to accents, but without actually wanting to be derogatory to come across like that. And of course, how to approach schools and teachers. obviously schools and teachers are already sort of under pressure from the curriculum to jump through hoops, so we don't want to come along as a bunch of undergraduate students and say, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, but we know what to do right. And one of the, like a big one of the biggest problem I've identified is that it's probably the inconsistency between different schools. Some schools can have a really good A-level English language linguistics, not yet, A-level English language program, and we don't want to go to them and say, you need this when they're already doing something really, really good. So sort of looking at what teachers are already doing, liaising with teachers, and building up that way. So what next? So I want to finish developing materials, start to contact schools, and make arrangements, get other universities involved. Sort of relating to the last 2 points, I've started to make contacts with the UE down in Bristol and the FE college there that does GCSE English language, and sort of a tutor there, and started talking about even developing sessions for teachers. More research is needed into sort of the state of linguistics in education. Dick Hudson has already done quite a bit of that, but I think that needs to be sort of built upon. And there's some sort of funding coming up here for research into the impact of UCLO and modern foreign languages. We're developing a wiki and a Facebook page to sort of liaise, and we've got further links with UCLO by tutoring. We're going to help tutor the UK team who are going to the States this year for the International Olympiad finals. So just to finish up with, this is a meme I've come across recently on the internet. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. I don't think it seems to be not actually said by Einstein. It seems to be more linked to Kurt Vonnegut, sort of said through the voice of a character, as any scientist who couldn't explain to an 8-year-old what he was doing was a charlatan. I don't think linguists get enough opportunity to explain what they're doing to young people, to 8-year-olds, and I think it's something that we need to develop as linguists. Thank you. Maybe 30 seconds for questions.
Well, about 3 minutes, and I'm sure we're all bursting because we all have opinions on this. So put some time in. Who's going to go first? Okay.
Yeah. So I was wondering whether you've looked at maybe other countries and whether they do linguistics in their schools. So I was the only one that heard of linguistics in school. It's because some type of linguistics gets done, for example, in Italy, and I know in Spain and France as well, and it's still pretty bad. But it's kind of the more classical tradition, Latin type based.
So some of the people in the group are international students. The reason we, as one of the third sort of area to develop was international schools, was because people wanted to be able to develop sort of a model that they could apply to their home country. So it's not something I know about that much. I know there's, it's probably linked with the thing that the linguistics Olympiads have been going in other countries since the mid-60s, but only in the last 3 years as an official thing here. I don't know whether that's to do with maybe the status of English as a global language and related to the whole sort of lack of motivation to learn second languages and foreign languages in this country. But no, it's one of the areas that we want to look at.
Just as sort of examples, there may be some good examples to follow somewhere out there.
Yeah.
Not in Italy, but or Spain.
No, there's. So one of the reasons we're doing this UCLO tutoring is that the American team have this very, I think Graham will be able to tell you a bit more about it, but seem to have this strict regime of tutoring their contestants in some sort of military boot camp style. That's not what we want to do, but we want to, thinking, well, maybe we should be giving some more sort of background into the linguistic side of things. So no, I think there's a lot of scope for research both in linguistics and in education research. That's, I mean, again, you want to look at what other people are doing. So if something's already been done, you don't need to do it. And yeah, some of the groundwork's been done. So that's sort of in the scope of, as I mentioned at the end, more research. It would be good to do more research.
Do we have one more quick question?
Do you think that teaching people, like you were saying, teaching people second languages, that improves their knowledge about linguistics to some degree? And do you think is it easier to convince people to spend money on learning a second language than specifically learning about linguistics?
I think in reality it probably is, but it's not just not sort of what we call linguistics and knowledge about language, which seems to be underrepresented in schools in this country. I mean, it is probably more in the news, the fact that less and less young people are taking up modern languages. Yeah, there's one sort of pitch I've been sort of working on, because there does seem to be money, because it's more readily identified that. Do you have a question, or do you have help? Yeah. What's my train of thought? So yeah, linking to things like Antonella Sirachi's been doing with Bilingualism Matters, and the importance of bilingualism and learning a second language from a young age. Though not all young people in this country have the access to a bilingual community, or the motivation of their teachers or caregivers to learn a second language. But I think sort of, particularly getting back to that last quote with explaining things to 8-year-olds and young people, sort of emphasis on the primary age, developing some sort of engaging sort of primary age children with linguistic inquiry, or just inquiring about language and communication and speech, could almost be sort of some of the I mean, this is a research question, really. It's more of a hypothesis than anything solid. Could be sort of bilingualism light, if you like, sort of bilingualism without sort of some of the effects of the metalinguistic knowledge you'd get from bilingualism, but for those who don't have the provision of a bilingual community, to sort of games and exercises and developing that sort of thing.
Okay, Graham, do you want to just come in quickly, and then we have to move on?
In relation to that question, is that most of the kids who do really well in the Olympiad are doing things like maths, further maths, physics and chemistry. So I really think that one of the things that is good about doing linguistics at school is that it appeals to both arts, sort of English, foreign language people, and also the natural sciences. And I think what we really need to do is to try to get those groups of people talking in schools. Yeah. And that's what's not happening at the moment. And that's what I think UPRO and other things can do.
Thanks. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from this project, so thank you very much.